So functions were created so that we can reduce using redundant code. That means, like say you want to write a function that calculates the sum of marks of the students in a class. Now you will just define a function, find sum of marks, and then you will pass the parameters as an array. Okay, an array and its size. Now what it will return? It will return the sum of every element in the array. So let's say you are in a class and you are a teacher in a class and you want to find the sum of marks obtained in the subject physics for all of your students. So she will pass an array which contains marks starting from roll number 1 to 50, okay, into the function, and the function will return the sum of all the elements. Okay, so then the question is, why are we using function? We can use a for loop to do the same. What if we need to call the sum function again and again and again at different sections? So each time you need to write the for loop again and again and again and again. So that is redundant code. So in order to reduce redundant code, we have come up with something called as functions. So functions pose the idea of define once and then use anytime. Okay, so define once and then you can use it any number of times. Okay, now this makes your code look clean, easier to write, and also to easy to debug. So when you divide the problem into different functions, you can actually locate where the bug is actually present and then just work on that function only. So if you're working on a large based project, which you will be, you need to first divide the problem into many subproblems, create a function for each of the subproblem, solve each subproblem, and then that is how you will be solving the entire problem. So it's basically a chunk of code that you can use over and over and over and again. I think that's clear. Yeah. So how to create a function? That's the next step. So you use a fn keyword to define a function. Now you might have noticed that already that I have created a function called as fn main, just the main function, which was really important for us to execute the program. And the first question was, what is the mandatory function? That is main function. So you get an idea that the main function is required for every Rust program, right? Now you can have another functions. Let's say I want to add two numbers, x and y, and return x sum. So I'm going to create a function called fn add, which takes two parameters, that is x and y, both of them of type i32, and then I'm going to return an i32. I32, as I've mentioned before, you might be having an idea what is i32. Okay, it's just an integer. So it takes input as two integers, and then it returns their sum, which is also an integer. Okay. Now imagine, can you add two different numbers of different data types? It is not possible unless you actually make their data types the same. Okay. So you cannot add stuff of two different data types. Okay, you cannot add like a string with an integer or a float with an integer. These things are not possible. Until you convert each of the variable into a float, you cannot add it. Okay. Now, x plus y, that is return x plus y. And I'll show you an example so that you understand it really well. We have the functions. So the main function is the first function that we use. We use a fn to define a function, and then we will place its name, and the parameters that it takes will be placed inside the parenthesis. Okay. Now let a equal to 1, b equal to 1, and so my variable a is 1, my variable b is 1, and I'm going to call the function add ab. So if I use the function add ab, that is 1 and 2 are passed as the parameters, then 1 plus 2 will be calculated and the value will be assigned to C. Now let's see the definition. The definition is a function add should take two variables, x, which is a i32 type, y, which is also an i32 type, and it should return an i32. Now x plus y, you see, you might be confused with this x plus y. So I have also got the return x plus y. Okay, so return x plus y, that means just do the addition and then return x value. Now it is safe to just typing x plus y in Rust, because Rust allows you to like don't use the x plus like return keyword. You just type x plus y. That would obviously mean the same to return x plus y. So return x plus y and just normal x plus y, both of these stuff are the same thing. Okay, if you just type x plus y, that means it is a returning x plus y. Now we will see what happens when you execute this program. So let's come here to the and let's say Rust C, type the file name. The file name is functions.rs. So we're compiling, we do not have any compile errors. Now we are ready to execute. Somebody asked how to execute. So you type dot slash, and then your file name would be obviously function.exe. This is the case of Windows. You might have different scenarios for Linux and Macintosh, etc. So you can see C equal to 3. So what happens? A is a variable that is set to 1. B is a variable that is set to 2. Now we are going to pass A and B to the function add, so that now C gets assigned by the value the sum of A and B. Okay, I think the idea is clear. Now functions are really important. Functions are those things that you would require to be like using all throughout your sessions, and even if you are working with Rust for a long period of time or any programming language, you need to understand what a function is, what does a function do, etc., etc. Okay. Now, I think you understood what. Now, the next important thing is, this is very, very important for you to understand. So Rust is not a interpreted language, it's a compiled language. And it has also got an intelligent compiler with a really nice debugging system. So it actually can show you the errors and the description why that error is occurring and the possible solutions that you can come up with in order to solve the error. Okay. So Rust doesn't care where you define the function, only that they are defined in somewhere in the scope segment. Now I will explain what that is. So if you have usually used different languages like C or Python, then you might be knowing that if you want to call a function like say add AB, then you need to define the function before calling the function, right? So if like I need to always place the definition before calling the function. So before calling the add function, I need to define it. But in Rust, you can define it before the main function or even after the main function. It is not a problem because the compiler can understand that you have declared a function at some point of time. Okay. So I cannot show you a good example. Like I need to actually show a C, or a C or a Python in order to show the difference, so that you know that it needs to be. See, in C, we used to declare or we used to define all the functions before writing the main function, because you cannot call until they are defined before the main function itself. Whereas in Rust, the position of the function definition does not matter. It is just mandatory that it needs to be defined. So if you're calling C equal to add AB, then you must have a definition for the add function. But it does not impart the strictness that it needs to be defined before the main function all by itself. Okay, I think you got the idea. Even if I put the add function below the main function, it will still work without any error. You can see it, right? But if you were trying to put this add function below the main function in C, I don't know how many of you have tried C, but if you have used C, then you know that if you did not place the add function before the main function, it would obviously show an error. Okay, so that's the idea of function definition, because Rust doesn't care where you define. It just means that you need to define. Okay, now.